Welcome back, everyone, to yet another exciting episode of Tevora Talks. I am your host, Cash, joined as always by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Mr. Matt Mosley. But before I ask Matt to say hello, I actually have to part ways with you all because I have been called into a live forensic engagement. But the exciting news is Matt is still joined by somebody. We do have a special guest today, and I'm going to let him kick it off. So without further ado, all you, sir. And goodbye, everybody. And I'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Welcome, Jason. So for those that don't know, we have a guest today, Jason Pieters. He is a Tevorian of over a decade.
Yeah, I've been here on and off for a while,
huh? Yeah. Jason was at Tevora before I was at Tevora, and we both kind of left and came back. We're boomerangs, they call us.
Yeah. I think we're some of the most successful ones, right?
I would say I would agree with that.
Yeah.
If I don't pat myself on the back, I would say.
I know. We gotta hype it up a little bit here. I got really lucky when I left because I went to two different companies when I went to go be like a corporate guy, right? And I had really good mentors there who were great people. Tom Lindblom and John Scherf. I'm gonna shout them out. Really
Nice.
great people. But they really got it, especially with my background as a consultant, my background in the Marine Corps. It was, they gave me a little bit of leeway to kind of feel things out and make suggestions. And I always felt like, even though I was in the same company day in, day out, and there was a lot of the same problems every week, that we had to address, or, oh, it's SOX time, or we got the auditors coming in. I was lucky because they always had new ideas. They were open to new ideas. So I was able to keep myself, I don't want to say entertained, right? But I was able to keep myself kind of still passionate about what I did. So
Yeah,
it was
great.
Really nice.
So I did forget about that you were a former Marine. So that's the interesting time because you used to do physical security, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So 1994, I joined the Marine Corps, and I originally joined as a military policeman because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it was literally like 2 weeks from the time I called the recruiter till I was in boot camp. So there wasn't a whole lot of not a lot of thought process went into like what I wanted to do. I went in there and I was like, I want to do the coolest thing. I want to blow stuff up and I want to shoot. And I was like, I want to be a grunt. And, my recruiter was like, no, you don't. This is what you want to do. And so he convinces me to like, hey, go be a military police officer. You learn a trade, whatever, you learn a job, you can get out and you have some security if you want to get out after 4 years. I said, oh, man, all right, I'll do it. And I got into it. I started doing military police work, worked around a lot of great people, but I didn't really have any, interest in going and working in law enforcement afterwards. Okay. Especially after the stuff I saw in the Marine Corps, it's like, it's a small city unto itself. Right. And these are just people, right. They earn the title Marine and they wear the uniform, but they're still people at the end of the day, and they commit crimes, and, there's domestic violence and child abuse and all these other things, sexual assault, that I was like, I really don't want to deal with this. And so I in-docked for SRT, Special Reaction Team. And that's when I really started learning about beyond the kind of surface level security, right? Where I really started getting into special weapons and tactics and really breaking down, like, how do you get into a building? How do you get into something where people don't want you to get in?
Nice.
Yeah. And our perspective was, very tactical. And then I did that for a number of years. I ended up going to Marine Corps Security Forces, where I taught. And, you're teaching the Navy, the Army, the Air Force about physical security, weapons. Like, some people never saw a pistol. It's like, we're going to teach you how to shoot a pistol. We're going to teach you how to shoot a shotgun. And that was a lot of fun. But my favorite part was we got to do physical pen tests.
Yeah.
So when it's like the fleet's getting ready to go out. Okay, we're going to do a physical pen test. And we worked with, different parts of the military. And we would go and try to talk our way into, secure areas, aboard ships. And so it was a lot of fun. And the number one thing I learned there was social engineering. I learned a lot about surveillance and how, I think physical security in the IT security world gets like a weird, you know, gets a weird kind of jacket, right? Where it's like, yeah, you just go and you try to break in, and it's, not a lot of thought process goes into it from some people's perspective.
Yeah.
But
So it reminds me of like that scene in Sneakers where for those that haven't seen it, Jason and I were kind of talking about it before, one of our favorite movies, but there's a scene where he's collecting a check at the bank and the lady says to him, so people pay you to break into their places to make sure that people can't break into their places. And he's like,
yeah,
it's a job. She's like, not a very good one.
Yeah. That's, that movie. So movie comes out in what, 92. And then I saw it in like 93. Right. And it just like really, Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, you got that young River Phoenix in there.
Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd.
And if
how do you not
spoiler alert, James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones, right? When he makes his appearance in the movie.
Ben Kingsley.
Yeah. I mean, powerhouse people, right? And they portrayed physical security and logical security in such an interesting way. There's a lot of movies out there that talk about hacking. You got Hackers, you got, some people would say The Matrix, and you got all these movies, and it's like they give you a great entertaining way to look at hacking. They give you a couple good tidbits, but when it came to like the real work that goes into like physical security or understanding, how am I going to address this entity for security? I think they really broke it down the best because,
and the social engineering too.
Oh yeah. Surveillance, once I started, learning those things in the Marine Corps and I reflected back on the movie, I'm like, wow, this is really, really good. And I just had a knack for it. I think it, I love to tell a story, right? I love to tell a good story, and social engineering is telling a story.
Yeah.
I got to tell this story. I got to become a friendly person. I got to become this thing to get in here. Or maybe I don't have to become a friendly person. Maybe this person is going to respond better if I'm a little bit more abrupt. I'm a little bit more straightforward. I'm a little bit more prickly to deal with. And, that psychology of it just sold me immediately. I was like, wow, I got to figure out how to do this full time. And at the time I had planned to stay in the Marine Corps for 20 years. I was on security forces when September 11th happened. And so I leave security forces and I just kind of lost my taste for the Marine Corps, I guess is a good way to put it. Nothing against the Marine Corps. There was a saying, once it's no longer fun to put on the green tree suit, it's time for you to leave. And that's, that's the way it worked out. 8 years later, I found myself kind of out and about in the civilian world, trying to figure out what I was going to do. I didn't want to be in law enforcement. I knew people in law enforcement. I could have got a job in law enforcement, I'm pretty sure, but
yeah, I have no doubt.
I took the long route. I got out. I worked for a spy and security company for a while. Like,
really?
Yeah, they sold like spy cameras, and they also did federal alarms and stuff.
Oh, cool.
For like big installations. But I didn't do that. I just they're like, hey, why don't you just be the store manager? I was like, cool. So I managed this store and sold like cameras and, Tampizio alarm pieces. And we had tons of books. And so I just started like reading all of the books, how to pick a lock. And it's like, I already knew from experience how to pick a lock, but it's like, I had never read like theory and like, why does it actually work? And so I started reading up on all the locks, and then I started reading up on, like identity theft and like, how do people get a new identity? I had to like all the, like how to run away and create a new identity.
Yeah. How to Be Invisible. Great book.
Yeah.
Yeah. JD and Luna.
And I had already read books like Rogue Warrior by Dick Marcinko, which is a great book, but please don't use that as a as a blueprint for how to do physical pen tests. So, if you've never read the book, I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you want to read about like some wild physical penetration testing, read Rogue Warrior by Dick Marcinko. Tactical genius, but I heard he wasn't a really nice guy. So but yeah, great book, a very interesting book. So I got, I read that again. I read as much as I could, and I ended up leaving there, and because I wanted to go to school, I wanted to get a job doing something in IT security, with kind of that sneakers thing in the background. Like, well, I got the physical security, I know that stuff. Let me learn about computers. I had a brother who worked in computers, so he's like, oh, it's really easy. I was like, oh wow, it sounds easy. And then I find out, no, it's not easy. It's a super hard. So I ended up going back to school though. And that's, I was just lucky that the part of IT security where it's the logical and the analyzing, what's a hard target, what's a soft target, where can I hit a system, or where can I hit a building to get access? That type of logic lined up really well. And I was able to, adjust my thinking enough to make it work in logical security. So, and I'm not dumb. I wouldn't say I'm a genius or I'm like exceptionally bright, but I'm not dumb. So I was able to, take notes and pick up on stuff.
Yeah.
So
few people will pick up a book and learn a new skill on their own. So
yeah, I mean, that's really, if people wanted to learn security, it's like, go read a book.
Yeah. There was no degrees. There was no college courses for that stuff back then. Right. Like nobody taught pen testing,
Yeah. It wasn't pen testing.
Right.
Yeah. It was
like when I was 15 hacking my high school website, like nobody taught me how to do that. Right. And then when I got caught, thankfully, the IT guy, gave me some slack and kind of mentored me a little bit and, prepped me. And I ended up doing something else before I got into security. I got recruited at a security conference, but for me, hacking was just hacking. And it wasn't like like I said, there was no schools. I didn't even know there was a career path. I didn't know you could get paid to do this. Right.
Yeah.
Like I had seen sneakers and I was like, oh, that's like a one-off niche, boutique type thing. I don't think there's companies out there to do that. So
yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, there's no way. And security was big, but at the time, you're thinking, 20 years ago, maybe it was, hey, you're the firewall guy, or you're the networking guy. So here, deploy this firewall. Oh, now you're the security guy. You just deployed.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. That still goes around today.
Yeah. It still happens, right? It's like you become the security person by default. It's like, well, you understand networking. So we're going to start with the perimeter. And, and that was a time where it was like, well, we got a firewall, so we're good with security.
Yeah.
Move it on,
any rule and we're good.
No, yeah. Yeah. You had your PIX 501 up there and it's like, the lights are on. They're green. We're good. No, nobody understood it, but you had antivirus, it's like, I have antivirus. I have a firewall. We're good.
So I know one story about you from physical, but do you have a favorite that you did? We could talk about that one first, or if it's the same one, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun stories. Sometimes we would have to do urban surveillance where we would go out and look at cities. Maybe there was, something getting ready to go on in a city and they wanted a military perspective for like terrorism. And like, I always loved going and doing that surveillance because I had a system, one, I wanted to see everything I could see. And two, I wanted to steal everything I could steal. Right. So, I wanted to do surveillance and I wanted to do some dumpster diving. Nice. Because dumpster diving was the easiest way to steal something. And it was never the goal to like jump in a dumpster and find a hard drive, right? It's like, that's Yahtzee if that happens, but it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
You're not going to jump in and find someone printed out 1 million credit card numbers. Doesn't happen. But maybe you can jump in and find out like when the next company event's going at Applebee's, or, hey, this is a new project we're working on, or here's a memo about something, or just the basics like, hey, here's some notes from somebody's, morning stand up or whatever they had going on that day. And it talks about maybe a new software. I mean, and for us, we were looking at, security posture, what they were doing with their personnel, what are their routines for security. And, I hear a lot of people go do physical pen tests now, and it's like, well, how much surveillance did you do? It's like, well, we checked it out for a couple hours. We did some Googling, and then we
Right.
and it's like, okay, yeah, but did you learn anything? Like what's the value back to the customer? Because if I'm doing surveillance, I'm going to make sure that I can blend in, and I had a simple way to blend in when I was in an urban environment was, you're flying in or you're driving into this area and you take a shower before you leave, and you're not going to take a shower for a couple of days, because as soon as you get to your location, you're going to go pop kegs. You're going to go to the thrift store. You're going to go buy old, ratty, dirty clothes, and you're going to go become homeless for a little bit. You're going to do part-time homeless, because homeless people are invisible in this country.
Yeah.
And that's not a social commentary, it's just a fact that,
right.
If I want to blend in, if I want urban camouflage in a downtown or a corporate environment, I'm going to look homeless.
Mm-hmm.
People might chase you off, but you got a great cover. People aren't really going to pay any attention to you. They're not going to look at you because they don't want to make eye contact and feel obligated to give you money.
Right.
Right. And they don't want to stare at you because you could have mental health issues. But it's something that happens with our homeless folks in the US, where they become kind of invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was no big deal for me to do that. And then I could sit around at a bus stop or whatever and just watch what is going on in this company. Who's doing what? How often are the security personnel actually leaving the inside of the building and walk around the outside? Where are the cameras? Is there only, like, there's 2 entrances, but I noticed that only employees use this entrance over here. Why is that? What's going on? Oh, there's a keypad, there's a badge, whatever it is, now that basic surveillance, I mean, I can get a lot of information, but I can also figure out, where do people smoke?
Yeah.
Smokers are very social people, man.
Yep,
I go wash up, change. If I can get to that smoking area, I'll go over there and smoke cigarettes with people.
You got to get your nicotine, and what else are you going to do while you're getting your nicotine?
Yeah.
Talk.
You got to chat it up a little bit. Hey, what's going on? Especially if the smoking area is outside of their secure area, which I'm not going to say is uncommon, right? But it happens, especially if you go into like banks, things like that, where they don't have a perimeter.
Right.
They got to let people in, so it's like, where do their employees go? They go around the back, they do whatever.
Yeah.
When you can find those places, that's a great way to make friends, and friends are what get you into buildings. It's not, it's not a ladder. It's not a rope. You're not trying to like break in. You could pick locks. You could do all that stuff. All that stuff's great. But if I can walk in with a friend, man, that's
even better.
So much easier.
So much easier. One of the last physical tests I did was same thing. I found the smokers area, was just chatting it up, and then when the guy went to go in, he opened the door, and I had a big gulp with me, and I tripped and dropped it right at the door. And I was like, "Oh, I'll clean this up. Like, you go ahead." And I just held the door open while I was trying to like scoop all the ice out. And they don't want to help, right? Like,
no, they don't want to.
They just left the door open for me, and that's how I got in.
Yeah, I've done that. I haven't done that particular one, but I've done that where it's like, you got a box, right? Like, you carry a box, you set it down, you smoke a cigarette, and then when they go back in, you grab the box. You're like, hey, you act like you're wrestling for it, and some people let you in, some people won't.
Yeah. Oh, I'll hold that door for you. Here you go.
Yeah.
I did one where I forgot my badge, and the guy was like, I was like, it's my first day, I forgot my badge.
Yeah.
Guy buzzed me in, sucked because I had to include his name in the report.
I know, it's the worst. That's the part I feel bad about, right? It's like, I don't want to include their names. And that's something that I try to work out, in the letter of engagement, in our rules of engagement, like, am I reporting every name? The other thing about, doing that type of surveillance is you can find hot spots. Where do a lot of people go? I have one client in mind where they had 4 buildings and they were each on a corner, kind of facing each other. And there was certain areas where people would walk back and forth. It was kind of common. You could see people walking back and forth, and you could pick out this one executive who happened to be the CISO because he wore a suit. Obviously, his name was everywhere for the company. He was a CISO, and he would go and walk a certain route every day in between buildings for his different meetings. And it was just like, man, I couldn't do the physical pen test on them. It just wasn't in our engagement, but I just kept thinking, man, I really want to go over to that trash can one night and then under the lid just put in a RFID reader and just see how capture, you know. But it's little things like that type of, you know, doing surveillance, you can uncover things like that. And dumpster diving, you can find information. I mean, you know, nowadays it's a dwindling thing, but you know, if you got a good technique and depending on how deep you want to go on this one client, you could find a lot of good, interesting things. Just by
Yeah, I've
going in
only
the
done
dumpster.
that one time. I think you and I are probably the only Tevorians that have done dumpster diving, but maybe not. But,
Yeah.
but we found some contracts for the DoD. So shout
Yeah.
out to Major Paul Bertoloni. So he was
There you
my partner on that one. If you're listening, Paul, I miss you, bud.
You know, and that's the thing. Like you don't know what you're going to find in a dumpster. You could actually figure out a lot about people. I mean, especially because when, you know, the janitorial services go through, they just grab the trash and move on, you know.
Right.
And then people will tie up the bags, whatever. But you get like this nice, like almost archaeological package of each person's desk in a small bag.
That's true. Yeah. A little timestamp of the day.
Yeah. It's like, all right, well, it's like, okay, this is so-and-so. They eat yogurt, right? They eat Yoplait yogurt. Every time I've dumpster dived, I've noticed there's one Yoplait yogurt in this person's thing, and it has like their name on it, whatever. Dude, I'm sending them a, hey, you just won Yoplait yogurt, you know, like whatever it is. I'm gonna make it personal, you know. They have their kids, they have soccer schedules. People just throw that stuff away. But if you put that in a corporate context and you just take it just one or two steps further, right? You know, oh, they have soccer. Oh, I got the soccer schedule. Okay. Hey, I sent them the email. Hey, attaches a new soccer schedule. You know, we had an issue, you know,
Yep.
because you were able to connect with them. And I mean, yeah, you can do phishing. You could fish an entire company. You're gonna get some clicks. But how deep are you trying to go?
Yeah.
You know, are you trying to get on the civilian side? One of my favorite things to do now is just, you know, do an air sniff. Nobody's turning their Wi-Fi off on their mobile devices. And I can just see all the networks they're squawking for, you know, and then I go in and they have websites. You can just look, hey, where's this Wi-Fi? Where was it last seen at? What was that? I can't remember the name of the website right now. Was it?
Oh,
Stiggle?
to check the Wi-Fi's?
Yeah.
The SSS IDs. I don't remember, but I know
I
what
think
you're
it's
talking about.
Wiggle. What did I say? Stiggle? Wiggle.
Oh,
WIGLE.net. Yeah, wiggle.net. If you've never used it, use it. You can go in there and search for an SSID that you've seen. So if you're sitting outside of a building and you're just doing an open air sniff and you know you're seeing all these different SSIDs, you could pull them up and it'll tell you approximately where it was seen at last. So you get a map, you know, you don't even have to follow people anymore and be a creep. So you could just pick a couple that are close by and go over there and hack their Wi-Fi. I love hacking Wi-Fi, by the way, if you haven't figured that out. I just think that it's a treasure trove, you know, because it's the one place where people are truly going to commingle their work and personal lives is through their Wi-Fi network, you know. But in the civilian side, a good story was when I almost got eaten by rattlesnakes, man.
Yeah, this is the story.
Yeah, I think everybody at Tevora has heard this, but we had a client contact us and said, hey, we want a physical pen test. And I was the only one with any experience at the time. So I go and do the physical pen test. And well, there's a part of the story you've never heard. Nobody else has heard this. So I'll tell you the first part.
Okay, cool.
They had two offices, right? One in Santa Barbara and one in Arizona. So I go to do the Santa Barbara office first. But in the morning, my brother, he's like in some adult soccer league. He's like, hey, you're going to be up near here. Why don't you come play? I was like, all right, you know. what could go wrong, right? I'm going to go play soccer and then go do a physical pen test. So of course I break my nose that morning.
Oh, jeez.
So it's not like I twisted my ankle where it's like, oh, I can still do all the surveillance, you know, because I know already there's no physical security there. Like there's no security guards. So I'm not worried about like trying to hobble away, but now I got this broken nose and I can't breathe. And it was horrible. I go to Santa Barbara. It's a small, tiny office. But the break room was in the back of the building next to the dumpsters. And it was all glass, you know, because you want your employees to have some sunlight when they're eating their lunch.
Yeah, that's nice.
Right.
Make them feel like they're human.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice too, because it's like, well, you can't stick anything to the wall that has glass on it. Right. So everything they post up is on the opposite wall.
Oh, right.
So because it's like one of those like galley style kitchenette areas, you know,
Okay.
It's just long and narrow. And so the other wall has like, oh, this is where we're going to have this party. This is, you know, of course there was a security poster. I was like, oh, I'm going to make sure I take some notes on that.
Here's our Wi-Fi password.
Yeah. I mean, it has all this different information up that people just they don't think about because it's in the back of the building. Right. So I do that. I can barely breathe the whole time. Found some good information, made some good notes. A cleaning company was in. So the majority of the building was unlocked. So I actually got into the main building, they were, you know, in one of the offices of the main building. So it's not like they were the primary tenant, but the cleaning crew was more than happy to let me in. You know, their doors were locked and the cleaning crew was in the hallway. So it's not like I could try to pick the lock while I was standing there, but did make note of it. You know, cause I could have easily just went and hid somewhere until they left.
Right.
I already knew they already cleaned one side of the building. Right. So it's like, you know, hey, I know you're going to clean this bathroom. I'm just going to run down here real quick. Go down to the other side, you know, sit in the bathroom stall, watch some YouTube or something. I could have just waited.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in our rules of engagement. So I got done with that part, got the broken nose. And the next week I'm driving it to Arizona. Right. Now, this is the part of the story, you know, is so I get to Arizona and I messed up because I didn't do a good research for flora and fauna before I got to the area, which I highly recommend because I go and I stake out this building and I'm like, dude, I'm getting tons of good information. Every 30 minutes, the guy gets up to walk. I can see the main entrance. And this was a highly secure facility, you know, biometrics at every entrance. And I'm looking at like the fire escape ladder wells that are on the outside of the building. They're like super locked down. I'm like, man, this is going to be a tough one to get into.
And physical security had weapons, right? They had firearms.
Yeah, they were armed.
Yeah,
they were armed. So this wasn't a mess around scenario.
Right. Yeah.
I got the rules of engagement laminated in one pocket. I got the letter of engagement laminated in the other pocket. You know, laminate your documents before you go, you know. So
That's so that when you have the guns drawn on you and you're peeing, when they pull it out, it's still dry.
It's still dry. You got to keep the urine off of it. Otherwise they're like, oh man, like, is this legit? There's a pee stain on the front. I can't read it. You know, you're going to jail. And that would be embarrassing, right? Like, yeah, I went to jail because I peed on the LOE. How do you explain that to the CEO? But so I watched the building for a while and I'm like, you know what? I got a really good sense of this building. I know when they're moving. And I noticed that there was like a blind spot. It's really dark on this one side of the building. The guy never goes over there. There's dumpsters over there. And I figured out I could go from the street and like, if I ducked down and crawled, I could crawl under the dumpster area, had like an area for water to drain out, you know, at the bottom. And it ran out to the street. So it was angled.
Oh, so you didn't even have to cut like fencing or anything.
No, I'm like, dude, I could totally.
So the story I heard was that you cut the fencing.
No, I didn't cut the fencing. I would have if it would have been in the LOE, but no, I didn't have to cut it. So I go, you know, I get up into the dumpsters. Dumpsters are locked, and I couldn't see the locks from the road because they have the locks on the inside. And I was like, damn,
Wow,
so I can't.
that's pretty cool. I mean, not a lot of people do that. They have the ability to, but they don't.
Yeah, they don't. And they did. So I'm like, man, I just felt like I kept striking out. But that's part of a good physical pen test is, yeah, you're happy when the client has you up against the wall. Like, I really got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So finally I was like, I got no other choice. Like, I've gotten everything I can get from surveillance. I've gotten everything I can get off of Google. I just got to try to get in and let's see what their reaction is, because part of testing it is testing the security's reaction. So I go and I try to get in the door, and it's biometrics, and the guy comes out. I try to talk my way in, and he calls a supervisor comes over, and they're like, what's going on? And so finally it's like, all right, the game's up. So I give them the LOE though. They're like, dude. So I tell them like how I got there. They're like, well, how did you get up to the building? Because we didn't see you on the cameras. And so I explain what happened. He's like, wait, you crawled over there? And he's pointing to the area where I had just crawled through, thinking I was like, Rambo or something. And he goes, bro, you cannot do that. There's rattlesnakes everywhere over there. I'm like, I'm thinking this guy's just talking, whatever, because I hadn't seen anything. Nothing's moving out there. The streets, the lights, because I had been around the building for hours. I hadn't seen anything. But the guy's like, dude, we get rattlesnakes all the time. And the supervisor actually had to supervise like multiple sites. He's like, bro, I just came from a site where they had me pick up a rattlesnake. I was like, no way. He's like, it's 2 blocks over. I was like, whatever. He goes, come here. So I go to his car. Sure enough, man, this guy pulls out a bucket and like the tongs, like he's, Steve Irwin. And inside this bucket is a freaking huge rattlesnake. And I'm like, oh my God. So then he drives me back around in the area. He's like, look, shines the lights around and everywhere. And it wasn't like right in the past. So I don't want it to sound like overly dramatic, but it was close enough,
Yeah.
Like he's like, there's a rattlesnake. I'm like, oh my God.
And it's Arizona, so I'm sure there were scorpions and whatnot. So.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Like that stuff I was ready for. It was like scorpions I was ready for. It's like I got the black light. It's like, okay, well, they glow, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do all my National Geographic stuff, but it's like it's a totally different test if they're like, yeah, there's rattlesnakes on one side of the building. Don't go to that side of the building because yeah, I'm not going to that side. Dude, I'm like, and I'm deathly afraid of like snakes and spiders, man. So it's not cool at all that there's rattlesnakes. But yeah, I almost got bitten by a rattlesnake.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's some Indiana Jones stuff, man.
I know. It's like, and it was only one rattlesnake. I couldn't imagine being Indiana Jones and like all those snakes.
The pit of snakes.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind for like a day or two, it was the pit of snakes. So, it's like, and the snake kept getting closer and closer every time I told the story. So it was like, oh man, that snake had to be like right up on me, Reality, the snake was like, it was probably like a good 50 yards away from anywhere I was,
But
and
still.
that rattlesnake wasn't trying to come get me 50 yards away, but it was close enough. Yeah, man. So that's one of my favorite stories though, because one, it shows ignorance, right? Like I should have, like I live in the desert of California. Like, why didn't I even consider that as part of the risk? But you get complacent.
Yep.
And the building wasn't in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was in a big industrial area. So there was tons of building.
See, now when I heard that story, I pictured it just being like, well, because I know what that facility does.
Yeah.
So I just pictured it kind of out in the middle of nowhere, like desert all around.
No, it's funny because it was like one side, the front side of the building, there was the highway. So it was like, highway, and then you have the fenced off area for the highway where you got shoulder and everything. Then you had a big parking lot for their employees. You had the street, and then you had their building. So on the one side, it was totally isolated. But on the back side where I was a street, and then there was just multiple buildings. So it was like, it was like a very industrial area. I probably had one of those streets to Industrial Way or Enterprise.
Right.
Way,
Yeah.
But it was that time. Yeah, they all have it, right? Where they built up the new office space. It's like, this is This is industrial way.
Yeah.
Very industrial. We're growing up
Technology drive.
yeah, it was one of those, and the funniest part though was when I debriefed the security manager, the CISO, who was also in charge of physical security. And I told him the story. He's like, bro, that's why we don't even bother with the lights on that side, because there's so many snakes. I'm like, oh man. So you're part of your security is the snakes that like they hang out by your building. So
it's like a moat with alligators.
Yeah, it was like, man, like you don't have it's like because there was like a little ditch, like because there's water runoff. It's like that. Yeah, they could have totally had a rattlesnake moat back there for me.
So you haven't done physical pen tests for a while. And I haven't done it for a while. At least I don't think you have.
No, it's been.
But I would think so. I was kind of going over my head, like what would I do nowadays? Which things have changed, and drones. Like, can you imagine having a drone nowadays for surveillance, but also like dropping like rogue access points like on the roof and stuff like that? Like you could do all kinds of
100%, man. I mean, with a drone, you could do all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You could go, especially those office buildings where they have balconies and they always have the plan out there. Go with a drone and drop something in the little flower thing. I mean, especially now with the drones, are so sophisticated.
Right.
And they're becoming cheap. You go to 7-Eleven and buy a drone.
Yeah. And if the war in Russia and Ukraine hasn't taught us anything, you can definitely drop stuff from a drone.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've seen those videos.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, the sophistication of drones, I mean, totally from a physical security perspective, technology has gotten so great to enhance the physical security testing.
Yeah.
It's just funny that we don't hear more about physical pen testing anymore.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I think it's a huge benefit to a company. And honestly, it was some of the most exhilarating and probably some of the best projects I ever did were those things. So they always make great stories, but they're so fun. I mean, they're nerve wracking, right? Like when you're and we had another person at Tevora that did one and guns were drawn on them and they didn't like it, but and nobody likes a gun drawn on them, but if you get in like at the end of the day, it's so like you're on cloud 9. Like, it's way more fulfilling than anything else I've done, honestly.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would do physical pen tests for free if I wasn't married with kids.
Right.
I mean, just they're so much fun. And there's a lot people could learn from their security posture because, it's an evolution. Security really is an evolution where we had great physical security back in the day. And that's what we were trying to protect, is somebody coming in because our secret sauce was written on paper, locked in a filing cabinet.
Yeah.
And then we went to computers, and now in some ways, if you don't have a physical aspect to your business, if you're just an IT company or you're just something turning out things, they're not as worried about that physical security anymore.
Right.
And it's interesting. You're not going to steal the same data that you used to be able to steal or access. I always say steal, but I mean, try to expose, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like even cybersecurity awareness training, remember we would always teach clean desk policy.
Yep.
And I don't even know if companies even have a clean desk policy anymore, but it used to be at the end of the day, or even if you left your desk, whatever sensitive information or anything just goes in the drawer, lock the drawer, walk away, lock your laptop, make sure it's secured to the, like we had an incident in our old office, 2 offices ago, I guess, where someone had come into one of the other offices and stole stuff. And so after that, I went and got laptop locks for everybody. They're not going to stop anyone who's, committed to it, but it'll prevent someone from just walking off with one. But that stuff is no longer a worry. It seems like,
Yeah.
So,
we call it being a hard target. Like, why aren't people trying to be hard targets anymore? It's because they shifted their focus. They're like, no, it's all in the cloud or it's all in the bits. But if you're a soft target, if you're just out there with passwords or unlocked laptops or the door wide open, people can walk in, I might not be able to grab the secret sauce. But if I can walk in, if I can get a look at, if I can shoulder surf, right? 15 minutes of shoulder surfing, with a little notepad and pen as I walk around. You know, I'm not going to memorize it. What was that, Hackers, where they walked around and memorized all the passwords? I don't have that type of memory. But
Right. Yeah. Lord
I
Knight.
got a really sharp pencil and a piece of paper here. You know, or, you know, especially with technology the way it is now, it's not a big deal to just walk around with your phone camera on.
Yep.
Capture everything you want.
Head down, listening to headphones. Nobody even notices you. But anyway.
Yeah, you put headphones on, man. That's like that's another form of invisibility, right?
Yep. I was gonna say that during when you were talking about the
home,
but I was like, oh, I'll let him keep talking.
No, you put headphones, you know. But all those things, they add up, right? Like if you got a soft target, you might have like, hey, we're in the cloud, we're in this, you know, this incredible colo in Vegas where a hurricane's not even going to take it down, and we have armed paramilitary. Dude, that's awesome. You know, I'm all for it. But if I could just walk into your office and grab a laptop,
now well, maybe that VPN connection with stored creds, probably.
You know, hack some Wi-Fi. You know, I'm on the Wi-Fi network now. You know, what can I do here? Because ultimately everybody's connecting in there. It's like, don't forget that, you know, where you're sitting is just as important as where your data's sitting.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are missing that. I think people are, you know, it's cyclical because it was like physical security. All right. Logical security went from, hey, we have a firewall and antivirus, we're good. Now, you know, we have AI, we have, you know, we have our GRC tools, and we have policies and procedures, and everything is, you know, to the nth degree almost on the logical side, still not good enough most times.
Yeah.
You know, but we've put a lot of effort in there. You know, and I posed a thought to somebody who's younger that does pen tests. I was like, you know, what happened now if we went and did a dumpster dive? Have people gotten so focused on the other that they've become complacent here? I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air about it, you know, because we do see the use of shred facilities, right? So, yeah, you know, what are they shredding? You know, are people treating the information the way they should? And a lot of these programs, I think what a lot of people forget is we always architect everything for perfection, but we fail to manage to reality. And that perfection is like, hey, everybody knows this is secret, throw it in the shred bin. Nobody's lazy. Nobody gets confused on what the shred bin is versus what the trash can, the communal trash can is, you know? And so the perfection is like, yeah, we have a shred bin. Everybody throws it in there. Here's a policy. It says, but is that what the reality is? Like, are we really managing to that reality? Are we checking it? And, you know, people would think I was weird because the last company I worked at where I wasn't a consultant, I would peek in the trash can, the communal trash can, and be like, what is it? I would look on the printer. What are you printing?
Yep.
You know?
Oh, every physical pen test I've done, even when I was doing pen testing and I would be like in the office and they would set me up with a workstation or whatever, I would just walk around and look at what people wrote on Post-its on their monitors, or I'd flip the keyboard. You know, like I remember I was doing one for like a major fast food chain, and up on the wall was how to sign into the time card system. And I added myself as an employee at $99 an hour.
There you go.
And, you know, it was just those things. It's like, that was kind of out of the scope of the pen test, but it was, you know, if you can't do the basic foundational stuff, what am I going to find on the rest of it?
Yeah. You know, and that's the thing is like physical security is so, in some ways it's very basic. I think there's a lot of kind of IT security folks who snub their nose at the physical security side. You know, it's not logical. It's not, you know, it's not as hard as, you know, committing a web hack or gaining, you know, remote.
Mean, but it is though. Like, I think it's,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's
doing physical pen testing, I thought was pretty hard. Maybe it's just more nerve wracking, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy to do well. It's not easy to do well. I think, you know, I think that a lot of people could go and do basic site surveys. They could go do a walkthrough and look at cameras and say, oh, you have a blind spot. But when you really look at it,
go ahead.
You know, from a critical lens, right? When you really go in there and want to analyze it to a deep understanding, like I really want to understand your physical security program, it takes on another level.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you ever read the book No Tech Hacking by Johnny Long.
Yep.
Right. So Johnny Long, if you guys don't know, he's the Google dorks,
Google hacking.
Google hacking grandfather or godfather. But he wrote a book called Non-Tech Hacking in 2008.
Yeah.
The stuff in that book still works today. Like,
oh yeah, it's
still
awesome.
works.
Yeah, I really enjoy the stuff he puts out, Johnny Long.
Right.
Very interesting person, and the way he thinks about stuff is very interesting. Kevin Mitnick, if you never read anything by Kevin Mitnick, go read it. Whether I know like people will say like, oh, he's not that technical, whatever. He is technical, number one. But number two is his physical security, his social engineering stuff is some of the best stuff I ever saw. I mean, his psychology, the way he went and actually nuanced, setting up the dollar drop or the $20 drop, where he would go in and like bring a $20 bill up to the secretary or whoever's sitting behind the desk. Hey, I found this out here.
Oh, and establish
blah, blah,
credibility.
establish rapport.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff was so interesting to me. The psychology, hacking the wet work of every network. People are the wet work. They're the people. That's the thing, that if you can hack them, man, you're in.
Yeah.
And physical security, I think, I don't know. It's like I want to look at the future and say like we're gonna have kind of a not a renaissance, but we're gonna see people want to look at it again.
Yeah,
maybe,
I think so.
maybe not. We'd have to see. Unfortunately, we're reactionary creatures. So unless there's a big hack that involves physical security, people are gonna just kind of leave it by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to talk about this, but like active shooters.
Oh yeah,
it's not going away. And one thing that we did a couple of years ago from IR was we did a tabletop, and one of the scenarios was they wanted its active shooter. Yeah. So we did some research about where they were located, and we asked some questions about their office and stuff, and like, what would you do if someone came in the office? And the problem is like, yeah, they had locked doors, but the doors, everything was glass.
Right.
So there was no physical barriers, and we during those discussions, we identified a place where everybody could go hide. And also there was an escape route out the back, right? There was another path that they could go, because that's the first thing you want to do, right? Escape if you can.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then shelter in place. And so we did this tabletop, right? Everyone liked it. And nobody's running to this location, right? It's just a discussion in a room with a PowerPoint slide. But 3 months later, they had an active shooter, not at their office, but at an adjacent office. And the shooter ran into their building. And because we had run that scenario, they had that plan, and they ran into the place that we had designated and everything. And they barricaded the door, and then they exited when they could. And they were very thankful for us for running through that. And it was pretty awesome. It was pretty rewarding, honestly, to know that our plan worked.
Yeah.
And did help.
No, that's awesome,
lives,
man.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great, because that's something that people aren't looking at, right? Especially from our perspective of security people, is we don't always look at those types of scenarios, the active shooter, or now with coronavirus, it's funny, like now that everything's calming down, and I don't know that anybody like adjusted or really thought about the repercussions of these new changes. Like somebody just coming up and setting up this hand sanitizer station, not a weird thing anymore, right. Like it's not weird, but is it okay? Are we investigating that? Is somebody from the front going, hey, do you have authority to put that out here?
Right. Is it locked so it's not tampered with? Yeah.
Right.
Those are all kinds of things you have to think about.
Yeah. And then even if you don't want to like do something nefarious with what's inside of it, why don't you just put an RFID reader in there? People walk up, hand sanitizer and badge, man. Thank you. Well, hey, we got to refill this.
Well, those giant RFID like not garage door, but like car ports where the arm opens up and you just swipe your badge. Those can get a few feet out. RFID. You could easily put a sign saying COVID or whatever with that thing behind it, and then the hand sanitizer mounted in front of it, and anybody walking within 10 feet of that thing's gonna get it.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to deploy a badge reader like that is just to walk in and say, hey, we're raising money for the local whatever. Do you mind if we just put this out here? It's got a pamphlet about, you do something that's like not controversial,
non-threatening.
Right?
Yeah.
Kids soccer. Nobody's going to go and get angry about kids soccer.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're running a charity to help fight cancer.
Yeah.
Because then
people want to help.
People want to help, but they're going to feel guilty if they say no, right?
Yeah.
I can't say no to the people trying to fight cancer. It's like, and you almost feel bad using those scenarios, even though they're like, it's guaranteed. If I say cancer, they're going to let me do
Yeah. Kids cancer for sure.
Yeah. We're trying to save children here. Are you going to say no? I'm just want to put this out here.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to Kevin Mitnick, right? Kevin Mitnick in his book. I mean, everyone kind of knows this if you do social engineering, but he wrote it down that, people inherently want to help. If you give them a task and you're vulnerable, they'll want to help you. And then you gain that rapport and that credibility with them and stuff like that. So
yeah, you got to establish reciprocity, right?
Yep.
I'm going to give, you're going to give.
Yep.
That's a huge one with physical security and social engineering. The other part is just being, don't be overly elaborate in your social engineering. Some people want to create these big stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, what do you know?
We did one. It was actually the same one with Major Paul. We had 4 buildings we had to get into. And at the time, Breaking Bad was real popular.
Oh yeah.
And we were like, hey, we could be the bug exterminator. We'll go get some uniforms. We'll just do the perimeter. Right. And then like, maybe we can get inside and do kind of the edge of the building or whatever. And then we were like, we're just overthinking it. Like, it's got to be way simpler than that. Like, that's too much, And what happened at the end of the day was I walked in with a stack of pizzas and walked up to a meeting room, laid out all the pizzas, and people were walking by and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, we're doing a life insurance seminar. But we're not ready. Like, if you want to come back in 15 minutes, like, we'll have it. Right. And nobody wants to sit through life.
No.
And so people left me alone. And I had this conference room with all these pizzas. And then I ended up getting access. I took a pizza around and I was like, hey, you guys want some leftover pizza? And the guy's like, oh, no. And I was like, hey, do you know where the bathroom is? Because I knew it was behind a badge door. I was like, I just got to go real quick. And he badged me in, and then it was over after that,
Yep.
And actually, thinking back now, I think I left all those pizzas back there. The client probably wasn't happy, but oh well.
Hey, they got free pizza, man.
It was Little Caesars, but
hey, pizza is pizza. You know what I mean? Like, if free is free.
But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, Jason. As always,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
love talking to you. You're one of the more entertaining Tevorians that we have. So anytime you want to come on the show, let us know. And I'm sure you have plenty more stories.
I'll come back anytime to talk with you guys. And it's just fun talking about this stuff. You don't get a chance to in your day-to-day grind. So
exactly.
Hopefully we didn't bore people out there with this stuff. Hopefully.
No, I think people got a lot of information out of this.
I'm hoping somebody out there is like, you know what? I want to relook at physical security.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely post in the comments if you guys have ideas, or if you liked what you heard, or if you want to hear more. We can do more. I'm sure Jason's up for it.
Oh yeah. I'll talk all day, man. I'm a consultant. That's what I do.
Exactly. And as always, like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next time. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, everybody.